And welcome back to Farage with me, your host, Martin Daubney.
Across the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, 642 individuals died fighting for Britain alongside our allies. Many more were wounded. We will never forget their bravery and their sacrifice. And I know the whole House will join in me in remembering them and all those who serve our country.
Well, warm words indeed there from the Prime Minister, but however, it's been revealed that Sir Keir Starmer called for the European Convention on Human Rights law to be used to investigate British troops in Iraq. And while working as a human rights barrister, Starmer was involved in two separate legal cases that helped extend the reach of the ECHR into active war zones and opened the door to hundreds of veterans being investigated by the Ministry of Defence. And the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Tom Tugendhat, who served in Iraq, of course, and Afghanistan, says the combined effect of these cases has been to turn British troops into targets of legal lawfare, leaving senior officers paralysed by the threat of future prosecution. Now, writing excellently in today's Telegraph, he put it succinctly: the culture that treats the enemy like a common criminal and urgent action to save innocent life as a crime to be second-guessed with the luxury of hindsight is leaving us vulnerable. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the author of that article and, of course, the Conservative MP and the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. Tom, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. You're going to be a blistering column in today's Telegraph, turning British troops into whipping boys for the courts. Strong words.
Well, it's true, I'm afraid, Martin, and I've been writing about this, as you know, since 2013. I first wrote about this in 2013 for Policy Exchange. I wrote again in 2015 for Policy Exchange. I spent quite a lot of time campaigning against my own government to try and get some of this changed. And it's pretty disappointing, frankly, to be reminded again that it was the current Prime Minister who was one of those lawyers who made this possible. Because what's really important here is to remember that the European Convention on Human Rights was drafted by our ancestors who had landed on the beaches at Normandy, fought their way up from Anzio all the way through to Berlin. They knew what war was, and they knew the purpose of the European Convention was not to stop soldiers fighting. It wasn't to stop the strong defending the weak. The purpose was to stop the kind of war crimes that Nazi Germany, that fascist Europe had seen all too often. So the ECHR was never written to apply outside the signatory states, but it's legal action by people like Phil Shiner, the now disgraced solicitor, and the Prime Minister, who represented the case in the House of Lords, who expanded it in a form of legal imperialism outside the bounds.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade, and in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Do you think it's just beyond the pale, really, that I've spoken with so many veterans, SAS, Royal Marines, Commandos, RAF, and they all say the same thing to me. How can it be that Convention of Human Rights, lawfare is used in an arena of warfare in the same way it's used against civilians? Surely there should be a distinction.
Well, the thing is, under the ECHR laws, there is a distinction. So when I was a soldier in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were laws that said that I couldn't murder, I couldn't loot, do, you know, all those usual sort of things that are wrong. And those are called the laws of armed conflict. And we colloquially, we call them the Geneva Conventions. Then there are the ECHR rules, and they're supposed to apply inside the UK, inside France, inside Germany. And those are the things that constrain you on things like, I don't know, health and safety for your electrics and whether or not a policeman can hold you for a certain amount of time or not. That's what they're for. And just as a really simple example, just imagine a policeman on the street faces a situation where they have to draw their weapon. Now, we all know that policemen in those circumstances have to cry a warning, right? Of course they do. Are you honestly telling me that you're expecting soldiers at night in a conflict to cry a warning? Had we done that, we'd still be waiting for Hitler to die and for the end of Nazi Europe, because actually war is different. Anyone who is a legitimate military target in war can be engaged, even killed, without warning. That isn't true in civilian life, and it shouldn't be true in civilian life. The two are very different.
Tom Tugendhat, as well as decimating the lives of those who have been pursued for decades in the courts, it's having a devastating impact on recruitment and retainment. It seems to be just devastating the very heart of our armed forces.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's having a really serious impact. And you said senior commanders, and forgive me for correcting you, but it's actually junior commanders who are most affected. Junior lieutenants, corporals, people who are directly in charge of, if they're corporals, 8 men, if they're lieutenants, 30 men. You know, they're the ones who are taking these really difficult decisions. You've got to remember, by the way, they're not sitting around some sort of planning meeting, you know, with coffee and biscuits. They're exhausted. They've been in the field for weeks, maybe months. So they may have lost several friends. It's incredibly dangerous. They're tired, they're hungry, and they're trying to make really quick decisions that, if they get them wrong, may get them or their friends killed. So these are really difficult calls, and they're really split-second calls. And what this is doing is it's injecting doubt. It's making it harder. It's making people second-guess themselves before they make those calls. That makes it more dangerous for our soldiers, but worse than that even, and I know it's an extraordinary thing to say, it puts our whole country at risk, because it means that the strong, those who we train, those who we resource and equip to fight our battles for us, those who volunteer to do it in uniform, courageously, brave young men and women, won't be able to protect us. That leaves us all weaker and more exposed.
Tom Tugendhat, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your eloquence and an excellent article. That's the Conservative MP and the former Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. Thank you, sir. Now, I'm joined in the studio by my panel, of course. I'm still with the former Conservative Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis, and the former Political Secretary to Tony Blair, John McTernan. And I'm also joined, of course, by Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Let me get to my panels. I'll get to you first, if I could, Sir Michael. There's a growing feeling now that, as well as facing weaponry in warfare, there's the weaponry of law, lawfare, and particularly the ECHR being used decades after conflict, and it's destroying morale.
It is. Tom's absolutely right. And can I just say, Tom Tugendhat has been an absolute star in this area for many years. He's absolutely right. Our military forces are frankly amongst the best of us. They deserve our protection, our support, our pride. And for most of us, that's what happens. But there is a cadre, frankly, which has developed where lawfare is now out of control. The ECHR has been expanded by interpretation of our judiciary and other judiciaries so that now our military are frankly being persecuted. And that is not only dangerous, but it's harmful to the individuals involved.
John McTernan, may I put a point to you that a lot of people, particularly in the armed forces, are fearing that our Prime Minister is a bureaucrat, he's a lawyer, and he doesn't understand the reality of being a soldier, and it's damaging this government. Is that unfair?
Yeah, look, I think it is unfair because essentially we deploy our armed forces in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Northern Ireland historically, and they're deployed to restore the rule of law. Just because they're soldiers doesn't put them above the law. They are subject to the rule of law. Tom Tugendhat, I've got a great deal of respect for. He said there are rules of engagement. There is the law of war. There is the Geneva Convention, and it is right. And what happens when it's disrespected? What happened in Bloody Sunday was not just a massacre of Irish Catholic nationalists It was a disgrace to the history of the British Army.
But a lot of those IRA terrorists were given letters of comfort and were spared prosecution.
No, in Derry, people were killed by British Army officers, and that should not have happened. In Iraq, Baha Moussa was killed, and we didn't need to have an inquiry into how and why Baha Moussa was killed. We do need to actually stand by the rule of law as well as go in to restore the rule of law.
No one's suggesting the British military should be above the law. No one's suggesting that. And in fact, they're the best in the world, quite frankly, and their standards of decency are second to none. That's not to say that incidents don't occur. Of course, occasional incidents will occur, but if you look at the picture in the round, we can be extremely proud of our armed forces.
OK, thank you very much. Now, a Downing Street spokesman has told GB News this. As the Prime Minister made clear last week, we will never forget the courage, bravery and sacrifice made for their country by British servicemen and women. The Prime Minister did not represent the claimants in this case. He represented interveners, including the Law Society of England and Wales. The role of an intervener is to assist the court on points of law, not to advocate for either side. Now, the Prime Minister was not involved in the subsequent case heard in the European Court of Human Rights. Now,